What is going on, investors? Hopefully, you guys had a great week out there. Hopefully, having a very good Friday as well. That is right. The markets are closed, but that doesn't keep us from talking about all the major FANG stocks plus Microsoft and Tesla here on the show. We'll jump in like we always do. We'll talk about all the news that happened this week with all these stocks, and then we'll jump over to the stock charts. And spoiler alert, these ones are back in an uptrend as we head into earnings seasons with these stocks just a few weeks away. Let's kick things off like we always do with Facebook. We'll start with the news and then we'll jump over the stock chart. Start of the week with Facebook at $287 per share. Went up nicely. This one is in a very, very steep and well-defined uptrend. End of the week at about $298. Now, the big news of the week, it appears that former President Trump, who's been banned from most of the, quote, major platform, it appears that he's moving forward with a platform of his own. And so this is really interesting. I don't necessarily think, I think it'd be easy to bet on that President Trump is not going to be able to create a platform that is going to compete head to head with a Twitter or a Google or a Facebook, but he does draw a lot of attention. If you watch some of the news, if you read some of the news, they're still talking a lot about Trump because, look, supporters of him still like him. Detractors of him still like reading about him. In fact, I would argue that President Trump probably drives the media still to this day, even more than the current president that we have. And so if any singular person is able to launch a social media site and get a lot of attention from it, quite frankly, Donald Trump's probably the one person out there that would be able to do that. So we'll see if he alone is enough to move the needle on something like this. I just think it would be interesting. I don't think it'd be tangible to any of these stocks. I just think it would be interesting from in an optics perspective. Now, Facebook, Google investing in 2 new trans-Pacific cables to Southeast Asia. This is a big market for them. They run these big old giant cables, I guess, like in the ocean, all the way from the West Coast, all the way to Southeast Asia to help bring internet to that part of the world, or high-speed internet to that part of the world. That is very interesting. Certainly if you live in that part of the world, might be kind of nice. Now, Facebook ad rates recovered from the pandemic and then some. It shows that the CPMs, which is cost per million, which is, I think, cost per 1,000 impressions or so that you get on a ad. So for every 1,000 impressions, that cost of that, like if you're an advertiser, you were paying like 50% less during the height of the pandemic in Q2, Q3. But then things started to recover right at heading into Thanksgiving. We headed into holiday shopping season. It appears that those CPMs are back up and maybe even higher than they were before. Obviously, that's good, not only for Facebook, but for Google and probably like Snapchat and Pinterest and all these sites that rely on online advertising. Now, moving on to Apple, start of the week at 122, end of the week at 123, but that is not necessarily a bad thing. When we get over to the stock chart, we'll take a look at that. Now, Apple is upgraded at UBS, seeing that the Apple car is worth $14 per share. So they're making an argument, if they come out with a car, that it's worth about $14 per share in earnings or stock performance. Now, they went from a neutral to a buy on the stock, raising the price target to from $115 to $142. That's about $20 higher than where the stock is today. We'll see what happens with that one. Now, Netflix started the week at 509. I wasn't really bullish on this one, but that was obviously a mistake because this one's at 539. When we get over to the stock chart, we'll see the price action on this one up 7% in a week. That's very nice for a Netflix. Now, Americans, according to a survey, are watching a lot more TV. 77% of people of the study said they're watching more TV during the pandemic, and 42% saying they're watching lots more. We'll see if this is a trend that is to continue going forward, but obviously the more eyeballs that are out there watching TV, the better it is for streaming platforms like Netflix. Moving on to Google, start of the week at 2023, ended the week, you guessed it, up to 2,129. In fact, it broke over the range. We've talked about Google for a while here on the show. Can it break above this range? And guess what? It peaked its head above that. Pat yourself on the back. I said that this one was setting up for kind of a trade down here, and then you sell up here. We'll see what happens with this one. But Google's in a nice, tight uptrend. Now, Google is set to welcome some employees back to the office. I was actually in Palo Alto last week, and people were talking about this. Looks like employees are going to come back to the office, and it's going to be, it's going to be more permanent than obviously we've seen out of Twitter and some of the other tech companies. So Google is looking to go back to normal, have employees back at the office. We'll see how that impacts their ability to hire people and retain people as well. Maybe people will enjoy that more than they will like staying home. We'll see what happens. Now, Microsoft started the week at 235. Boom, uptrend up to 242. Some decent news out of Microsoft this week. We're still waiting to see if they can confirm that Discord deal. Discord, the kind of a platform where you can kind of discuss things and things like that. Discuss things, everything from stocks to gaming and anything you really want. There's all kinds of discussion. It's like kind of the 21st century message board that were popular maybe 10, 15 years ago when the internet was still kind of developing. So we'll see if that Discord deal can go through. Microsoft has a pile of cash, and $10 billion, even if that price tag comes up, is kind of a drop in the bucket for Microsoft. Now, Microsoft signs up to a $22 billion HoloLens deal with the United States Army. So these HoloLenses, they cost $3,500, and they like go on the helmets. I've seen them before, not in person, but I've seen demonstrations of them. They go on the helmet of an Army Ranger or a soldier, and it gives them gives them all kinds of data. It's basically almost like a computer. It allows them to do lots of different things. I mean, they're $3,500, and Microsoft signed a gigantic deal with the United States Army. Obviously, they have a lot of faith in that product. Now, LinkedIn launches creator mode and a Clubhouse rival in development. So the Clubhouse, it's not something I've played around with. I've seen a lot of other people talk about it, how addicting it is, blah, blah, blah. But they're moving kind of slow. Clubhouse it appears like they're moving kind of slow. And in the tech world, the slower you move, the more you allow someone like Microsoft, a Twitter, a Facebook, any one of these other companies that have lots of money and lots of employees, they're going to catch up, and they're going to catch up quickly. LinkedIn is confirming it's working on a rival chat app for that. It's also making changes. The connect button, it looks like it's going to go to a follow button, so you can follow people more like you do like on a Twitter or something like that on LinkedIn. Now, moving on to Tesla, start of the week at 612, up nicely to 661. Not a big steep uptrend in this one. When we get over to the stock chart, we'll talk about that. But lots of news coming out of Tesla this week. Q1 deliveries were 184,000. That was way over the estimates of 161. The vast majority of those are Model 3 and Model Y cars, where you had just massive production in these ones. 182,000, almost 183,000 of the 184.8 was the Model 3 and Model Y. The Model S and Model X, which are the far more expensive models and models that have been out for a while with Tesla, came in at only about $2,000 in 2,000 units in Q1. That's not a lot, okay? And so obviously the demand for the lower price car is where it's at with Tesla, and I think shareholders are completely comfortable with that. Now, electric vehicle stocks rallied after our current president, Biden, proposed a massive investment in the EV market. So I don't take a lot. It doesn't matter who the president is, okay? I don't play politics on this show. It doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. I don't take a lot of stock in what they say or what they propose. It ultimately is what ends up happening with this. So we'll see what happens with this. But he did, inside this legislation that he wants to help move forward, you got 500,000 EV chargers by 2030. I think that's probably going to, maybe not that exact number, but that's probably something that's going to happen whether or not the government gets involved or not. But if the government does get involved, it does incentivize it a little bit. I don't see it here, but inside this was like tax credits to buy EVs. And so I think that certainly would, I'm not someone that owns an EV. I have family members that do. But if all of a sudden you give me a pretty good tax incentive to buy one, well, maybe I'd have to jump the boat on my next car purchase. So we'll see what happens with that legislation. Now, here's some big news as well. Tesla and Toyota reportedly considering an SUV partnership. I think that's the gap in Tesla's market. I know they've got this Model Y, they got the Model X, but the Model X is kind of weird with the flip up doors, and the Model Y is probably too small if you have you have maybe 2 car seats in the car, or you have a big family like 5, 6 in the family. So Tesla's gap is actually a nice SUV, like a Model S SUV. I know the Model X was supposed to be that, but in my opinion, I'd much rather have a Mercedes SUV. I'd much rather have an Audi SUV. If I was in that price range, I think that's personally that's actually where I've gone with my money. Now, if Tesla and Toyota partner on something and it's a really nice SUV and it's affordable to a certain degree, well, maybe that is something that could capture more market share for both those companies. We'll see what happens. Now, Tesla is expected to add a this is the semi-truck, not semiconductors, but they're running low on that. The whole auto industry is, in fact, but they're expected to add a semi-truck production line in Nevada. The thing is they're only going to produce about 5 electric trucks per week. So 5 times 52, which is the number of weeks in the year, you're looking at 250, 300 or so trucks per year out of one plant. It shows you that this market is small, but I'm sure the price tag on those trucks is really large. And so from a revenue perspective, might actually look pretty good for Tesla. Now, jumping over the stock charts. Here we go. We'll jump things off with Facebook. This thing has been in rally mood, bottom down here at 255, and is just basically gone in a straight line up. We talked about it last week that if we could poke our heads up above kind of these all-time highs that it made, and it did. It peaked up above 297, 300, and here we are sitting right at $300 per share. I would say until further notice, this uptrend is intact. You get any pullbacks, you should see support here at 286. Okay, any pullback into the 286 range on light momentum, boy, that could be a buying opportunity with Facebook. Or you could just trade this. You could just ride. I know momentum traders just have been loving this. You just ride this trend line all the way up with Facebook. Now, Apple is in an uptrend, not as steep of an uptrend, but is definitely look like it's working its way back up as we approach earnings with these companies, which are still about 3 weeks away. With most of them are reporting the 3rd week of April, which is the month we're sitting in now. But we are in an uptrend in this one, man. It bottomed out here at 116, 117. We're sitting at 123. Again, this uptrend, this slightly upward movement, this is intact until further notice. Any pullback to 120 is a buying opportunity. As we start approaching 125, I would expect some sellers to step in, certainly coming up here to 128, things like that. You could hit some speed bumps with Apple. Amazon also, as we talked about, was kind of in an upward channel. Same thing here with Amazon. This thing is in an uptrend. We might as well zoom in here since some of this older price data is not relevant right now, but we are hitting our head on this moving average line here. They're basically right on top of each other, right at 31, call it 3160, 3170. If Amazon is able to push through and above that, boy, that would be a bullish sign. I think we could come up here to 3280, 3300 at some point in the near future. But again, this stock also in an uptrend. This upward line is intact until we get a reversal pattern in this one. Now, Netflix actually popped up a lot higher than I thought. I mean, this is a very, very steep uptrend that we're seeing in Netflix, but we've seen it before. This thing kind of whipsaws out of all these stocks, Netflix and Tesla to a certain degree, but Netflix in particular whipsaws a little harder. I would expect sellers to step. We're right at 540, okay, on this one. I would expect this is a natural area where sellers would step in. If they don't, I tell you what, this one could easily get to 550, 560, even up to 565, where we've seen sellers step in the past as well. I think if you want to trade Netflix, there's some setups here that could potentially emerge. If we bounce off of 540, we could come back down here to 521. Areas like that could be buying opportunities as well for Netflix. Now, Google. has done what we thought it could. Well, not what we thought it could do, but what could potentially happen. So for almost a month. So this is back in February, back in the start of this channel, we kind of gapped up here. And we were in a channel from 2015 up to 2120, and we bounced up there, came back down here, came back up, came back down to 2115, and now here we are sitting right above 2120, which was the all-time highs in this one appear to be 2145. That is where it's headed. A break above that on a big green candle. Good Lord, the sky's the limit. This thing could get to $2,200 in a hurry. Now, if we get rejected right here at 2120, I tell you what, this thing probably coming back to 2017. And if you want to buy it at that point, who would blame you? The whole trend has been intact for nearly 2 months now with Google. We'll see if that continues as well. Now, moving on to Microsoft. Here's my chart. This one also trended up nicely, similar to Google, not exactly, but we've kind of been sideways consolidating in this one from about 2030 up to about 2045. I mean, there's been some deviations down here a little bit lower, but that's basically where we're at. This one to me looks like it wants to go to 2045. That's only about $3 where the stock is off now. What happens at that area? Okay, this, just like Google and Facebook, Google, and Microsoft are all in the same boat. What happens when it gets back to these all-time highs? Can this momentum continue up? If the momentum continues up in that is actually extremely bullish, not only for these stocks, but probably for Apple and Amazon as well, which are not near those all-time highs like these ones. Not like really close, but they're fairly close. And also Tesla as well, because if Microsoft, Facebook, and Google can push through their all-time highs, guess what? The rest of these stocks are likely to follow as well. So that's what I definitely will be keeping an eye on as we head into next week as well. Now, finally, we'll take a look at the stock chart of Tesla. Here is the stock chart of Tesla. Now, we have been sideways consolidating in this one really for about a month now, okay? This was back in early March. Here we are in early April. We've been consolidating between $600 and $700 per share, almost on the dot. Now, if we can break above this $700 level, yeah, you've got some areas up here at $775 that actually look kind of attractive, and looks like that one could break up there. Now, if you get rejected here at 700, you could come down here back to 600. So here's the thing with FANG. Okay, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft are approaching all-time highs, if not at all-time highs. What is going to happen with those stocks? If those stocks get rejected, in my opinion, it increases the odds that a Tesla, an Apple, an Amazon, a Netflix, those start to walk back a little bit as well. If those stocks break above, well, I think you've got pretty strong upside in these other names as well, like a Tesla, like an Apple, like an Amazon, probably even Netflix as well. Getting back in, not necessarily making all-time highs. We're at close to $900 all-time high here on Tesla, but I think we could easily get back into the $775 to $800 range on this one, on momentum, not only from Tesla, but the broader markets and the other FANG stocks as well. So that's certainly what I'll be looking at into next week. Hopefully, guys, have a great weekend. Have a great Easter. If you have kids, enjoy the Easter egg hunts and all of that. Hopefully, guys, have a great weekend. Good luck with your investments.